Betrayal at Gate 7. I should have sensed something was wrong when my husband, Marcus, insisted on driving separately to the airport. I need to pick up my parents first, he said, avoiding eye contact. Just grab an Uber to Gate 7. We'll meet you there. After 6 years of marriage, I had grown used to his family's subtle jabs about my working-class roots. Marcus came from old money, and his parents had never hidden their belief that I was somehow lucky to be with him. Still, I held my head high. This trip to Paris was supposed to mark a fresh start for all of us. I arrived at LaGuardia Airport 2 hours ahead of schedule, just as planned. My small carry-on contained only the essentials. Over time, I had learned to pack light, especially after enduring my mother-in-law's relentless criticism of my so-called lack of style. Rolling my suitcase beside me, I scanned the crowded terminal for Marcus and his parents. Instead, a sharply dressed flight attendant approached. "Miss Davis?" Her voice was polite but hesitant. "Your family asked me to deliver this message." My stomach tightened as she handed me a neatly folded note. The elegant, looping handwriting was unmistakable. "Mary, my mother-in-law. Dear Emma, after much consideration, Marcus, and I believe it's best if you don't accompany us to Paris. This trip should remain family only. We've canceled your ticket. Perhaps this time apart will help you reflect on why you will never truly fit in with us. Mary." My hand shook as I reread the cruel words. Years of veiled insults and manipulations condensed into a single devastating note. I pulled out my phone and dialed Marcus. Straight to voicemail. Well, look who's still here. That cold, familiar voice cut to the airport's noise. I turned to see them, Marcus and his parents, standing impeccably dressed in their designer travel wear. "Emma, didn't you get our note?" Mary's smirk barely hid her satisfaction. My pulse pounded in my ears. "I am family." My voice was barely above a whisper. "Marcus, please. I'm your wife." He wouldn't even meet my eyes. "Mom's right, Emma. This is an important business trip. We're meeting potential investors, and frankly, you just embarrass us." His father, Charles, scoffed. "Like you did at the gala last year. Bringing up your little community college job in front of the CEO's wife? Humiliating." I swallowed the lump in my throat, refusing to let them see me break. "I paid for my ticket myself," I countered. "You can't just cancel it." Mary's smirk twisted into something colder. "Actually, we can. Marcus paid for all the tickets, including yours. One quick call to the airline, and poof, gone." She waved her hand dismissively. "Now, if you'll excuse us, we need to check in for our first-class flight." They turned, dragging their expensive luggage toward the counter. Marcus hesitated for half a second, then followed, never looking back. I stood there humiliated, stranded. The flight attendant who had delivered the note lingered awkwardly, sympathy written all over her face. "I'm so sorry," she whispered. "Let me help you book another ticket." "That won't be necessary." A deep, smooth voice interrupted. We both turned to see a distinguished man in his 50s. His tailored suit was impeccable, his gaze warm but firm. "I'm John Whitaker, CEO of Sky Elite Airlines." He introduced himself. I happened to overhear what just transpired. The blood drained from Mary's face. Marcus and Charles froze mid-check-in, suddenly alert to the shift in attention. Whitaker turned to the flight attendant. "Miss Davis, would you come with me, please?" He gestured toward a quiet lounge area. "I believe we need to discuss what just happened, and perhaps review some footage from last year's gala." Without hesitation, I followed him, my heart pounding. This time, not from heartbreak, but from the realization that something was about to change. The tables turned. Mary's sharp, panicked voice cut through the terminal. "Marcus, do something. That's John Whitaker. He oversees all our international flights." For the first time in years, I didn't care. Mr. Whitaker remained composed as he pulled out his phone and made a quick call. "Megan, I need all recent bookings from Marcus and Mary Davidson." "Yes, that includes future reservations. Also, retrieve the footage from last year's gala. It's time we have a serious conversation about how certain passengers treat our staff." I settled into a chair in a lounge, still trembling, but this time not from humiliation, from the surge of strength rising within me. "Tell me everything," Mr. Whitaker said, his voice steady and kind. He flipped open a notebook. "Don't hold back. I'd like to hear exactly what your in-laws have been up to. At Sky Elite, we take passenger conduct very seriously. And something tells me your husband's family is about to learn an expensive lesson in consequences." Through the glass walls of the lounge, I could see Marcus and his parents locked in a heated argument with airport staff. Their check-in process had been halted, pending further review. Mary's face contorted in fury as she gestured wildly, her frustration boiling over. For the first time in 6 years, I allowed myself to smile. The next hour changed everything. As I spoke with Mr. Whitaker, the carefully crafted illusion of my in-laws' prestige crumbled piece by piece. "Your husband's family has quite the reputation with us," he said, scrolling through his tablet. "There are multiple reports of them berating employees, demanding special treatment, and threatening to ruin careers using their so-called connections. But the gala, that's what really caught our attention. How could I forget? Mary had insisted Marcus bring me, only to spend the entire evening treating me like an outsider. She had laughed at my job, called me the hired help, and made sure everyone in her social circle knew I didn't belong. What she didn't realize was that, while she was busy trying to humiliate me, I had been having a meaningful conversation about education reform with none other than the CEO's wife. Mr. Whitaker glanced at me with a knowing smile. "My wife was impressed with you that night," he said. "She told me you were the only person in the room discussing something other than status or wealth. Ever since then, we've kept an eye on Marcus and Mary. And honestly, we've seen enough." With a tap on his tablet, a video began playing on the lounge's massive screen. The first clip showed Mary at the gala, visibly intoxicated, berating a flight attendant because her champagne wasn't chilled to her liking. Another recording captured Charles badgering a customer service agent, demanding a free upgrade because he was supposedly best friends with the CEO. Mr. Whitaker let out a quiet chuckle. The best part? They never even realized who I was. Too busy flaunting their wealth to notice the one person who actually mattered. My phone buzzed. Another call from Marcus. I let it ring. Mr. Whitaker turned to me. "Now, about your travel plans." His voice was calm but resolute. "Your ticket was never actually canceled. When your husband attempted to remove you from a reservation, it flagged our system for potential financial coercion, which automatically triggered a review." I inhaled sharply. Marcus had always controlled our finances, but I had never considered abuse. Not until now. "Furthermore," Mr. Whitaker continued, "I'm upgrading you to actual first class, not the pseudo-business seats your in-laws book just to appear wealthier than they are." Before I could respond, a furious shriek echoed through the terminal. "This is outrageous. Do you have any idea who we are?" Mary's voice carried through the glass walls of the lounge. Mr. Whitaker pressed a button on the intercom. "Actually, Mrs. Davidson, we know exactly who you are." His tone was cool, measured. "Effective immediately, your family's booking privileges with Sky Elite Airlines have been suspended pending further review. Your first-class tickets have been revoked, and instead, you'll receive a refund in airline credit. Credit you won't be able to use for at least a year." The color drained from Mary's face as she turned, locking eyes with me through the glass. A deep shade of crimson spread across her cheeks. Marcus made a move toward the lounge, but before he could take a single step, security intervened. Mr. Whitaker wasn't finished. "Oh, and one more thing," he added, speaking into the intercom. "We've also shared our concerns about your conduct with our partner airlines." The realization hit them all at once. Their days of luxury travel were over. I exhaled, feeling something I hadn't felt in years. Freedom. A final goodbye. "I hope you enjoy your newfound travel restrictions," Mr. Whitaker said smoothly. Charles's face twisted in fury. "You can't do this. We have connections." Mr. Whitaker didn't even flinch. Had connections. Past tense. "Now, if you'll excuse us, Ms. Davis and I have travel plans to finalize. I'd suggest looking into train schedules." That was the moment everything spiraled. Mary lunged toward the lounge entrance, But security swiftly blocked her path. Charles, red-faced, fumbled for his phone, dialing his attorney. Unfortunately for him, even his lawyer couldn't argue with airline policies. Airlines have every right to deny service to passengers who mistreat staff. And then there was Marcus. For years, he had masked his true nature under the guise of politeness and obligation. But now, standing on the other side of the glass, he finally let the mask slip. "Emma," he bellowed, his voice laced with desperation. "Fix this. Tell them we're family." I rose from my seat and walked to the glass wall, locking eyes with him. For the first time in years, I saw him for who he truly was. "Family?" I asked, my tone calm but unwavering. "Like when you cancel my ticket without telling me. Like when you let your mother humiliate me over and over." Reaching up, I slipped off my wedding ring and held it up, letting the diamond glint under the bright airport lights. "Consider this canceled, too." At that moment, Mr. Whitaker's assistant appeared, holding a set of documents. "Your new ticket, Ms. Davis," she said with a kind smile, handing me the paperwork. "And we've made arrangements with our hotel partner in Paris. You'll have a suite separate from your soon-to-be ex-husband. His reservation, unfortunately, seems to have disappeared." 2 hours later, I was reclining in my first-class suite, sipping champagne as I glanced out the window. Below me, Marcus and his family were in a heated dispute with the airline staff over economy seating. Marcus had ended up in a cramped middle seat by the lavatories. Charles was stuck next to a wailing infant. And Mary? She was wedged between two burly, broad-shouldered bodybuilders who didn't seem too interested in making small talk. But the real satisfaction came a week later, while they were stranded in Paris, scrambling to book overpriced return flights on budget airlines. I was already back home, meeting with a powerhouse legal team. Courtesy of Mrs. Whitaker's recommendation, the firm handling my divorce was the same one that had represented her sister against an ex-husband with a history of financial control. With the airline records exposing Marcus' manipulation and a long history of mistreatment, the case moved swiftly. And as for Marcus' family, their carefully curated reputation crumbled. Once whispers of their behavior surfaced, more stories emerged. Former employees, past acquaintances, and social climbers who had once endured their cruelty were all too eager to share their experiences. Their social circles shrank. Charles's business partners distanced themselves. Mary's usual tantrums at airport counters finally got her arrested. Marcus? He was back at his parents' house, jobless. His career in ruins after his treatment of me became public knowledge. Meanwhile, I was thriving. 6 months later, I was single, teaching at a prestigious university thanks to Mrs. Whitaker's glowing reference. I attended global education conferences, flying first class on my own terms. And every time I boarded a Sky Elite flight, a small note was tucked into my ticket envelope. "Welcome aboard, Ms. Davis. Thank you for showing us what true class looks like." Because sometimes the best revenge isn't about retaliation. It's about rising above while those who sought to break you collapse under the weight of their own cruelty. As I soared through the sky, watching the world stretch out beneath me, I allowed myself a quiet smile. The view from up here was perfect.